It is 24,000 years ago. The sun has disappeared behind a wall of gray cloud. Snow is moving sideways across the land. The wind is so sharp it feels less like weather and more like an animal trying to get inside your skin. A child is wrapped against someone's chest. Their breath rises in short, white clouds. Behind them, a small fire burns low. Not because fire is rare, but because fuel is precious. Every stick matters. Every ember matters. Every mistake matters. There is no house waiting with a locked door. No heater, no medicine cabinet, no weather app casually informing you that tomorrow will be mostly terrible. There is only the group, the fire, the skins, the tools, the animals somewhere beyond the snow, and knowledge passed from older hands to younger ones. And that raises one of the most underrated questions in human history. How did ancient humans survive winter? Most people imagine a simple answer. They were tougher, they had fur clothes, they lived in caves, they hunted mammoths. But archaeology tells a stranger story. Because the cold was not the only enemy. In many places, it may not even have been the biggest one. The real problem was energy. Your body is a fire. In winter, that fire burns faster. Every hour in the cold costs calories. Every step through snow costs calories. Every night of shivering costs calories. If you are a child, pregnant, injured, old, or sick, winter is not a season. It is a long examination, and nobody gets to skip it. So the first mystery is not how did they stay warm? It is how did they stop warmth from leaving? The answer begins with skin. Not human skin, animal skin. A reindeer hide is not just a blanket. It is insulation grown by another animal. A fur pelt is millions of tiny air traps. The genius of ancient clothing was not simply covering the body. It was trapping still air close to the body. Modern winter coats do the same thing. We just added zippers, brand labels, and the mysterious ability to lose one glove every year. But making clothing in the Ice Age was not easy. A fresh hide is heavy, wet, stiff, and full of tissue. It has to be scraped, softened, stretched, dried, sometimes smoked, sometimes cut, and then shaped around a moving human body. A loose hide can help you sleep. A fitted garment can help you walk, hunt, carry a child, throw a spear, and survive wind. That difference matters. Imagine trying to chase reindeer across frozen ground while wearing a blanket. That is not clothing. That is a dramatic way to fall over. Ancient people needed sleeves, leggings, hoods, boots, mittens, seams, repairs. They needed clothing that moved with the body but did not leak heat at every edge. This is where tiny tools become enormous. Bone awls, hide scrapers, burins, needles made from bone or ivory, a hole drilled through the end so sinew could pass through. It looks small in a museum case, almost delicate, but in winter, that needle is a heating system. A needle means a seam. A seam means fitted clothing. Fitted clothing means less wind reaching the skin. Less wind means fewer calories burned just to stay alive. And here is the surprising part. Clothing may not have stayed only practical. Once people were covered most of the time, the body became harder to decorate. So beads, shells, pigments, and ornaments moved onto clothing. In other words, Ice Age fashion may have started because everyone was freezing. That sounds funny until you imagine what it meant. A child wrapped in sewn fur. A hunter repairing a sleeve before dawn. A grandmother teaching someone how to stitch without tearing the hide. A bead sewn where the shoulder catches firelight. Survival and identity were stitched together. But clothing alone was not enough, because even the best clothing cannot replace fire. Fire was heat, yes, but that is only the obvious part. Fire cooked food, making calories easier to access. Fire hardened wooden points. Fire helped work materials. Fire kept predators cautious. Fire turned darkness into social time. Fire made a camp visible to itself. But fire had a hidden problem. Smoke. Put a fire in the wrong part of a cave, and your shelter becomes a chimney in reverse. Your eyes burn, your lungs fill. You cannot sleep. You cannot work. You cannot keep children close to the warmth without also choking them. So ancient humans had to understand airflow without equations. They had to learn where smoke gathered, where air moved, where a hearth could warm people without poisoning them. They did not need the word ventilation. They needed the lived knowledge of it. And that is a recurring theme. Ancient people often did not have scientific language for what they knew, but they had results. They knew which wood smoked badly. They knew which bones burned hot when fuel was scarce. They knew how to protect embers overnight. They knew how to carry fire from one place to another. They knew when to build a small fire and when smoke would betray a camp. Instead of checking a thermostat, they read flame color, wind direction, ash, smell, and the mood of the sky. The fire was not just technology. It was a relationship. Someone had to feed it. Someone had to guard it. Someone had to notice when it was dying. In winter, a neglected fire could become a crisis, and the person saving it at 3 a.m. was probably not feeling especially cinematic about humanity's progress. But even fire has limits if the wind is strong enough. So humans built shelters. Not always caves. That is another myth. Caves are useful, but they are not everywhere. They can be damp, smoky, already occupied by animals, or far from food. In Ice Age landscapes, many people lived in open-air camps, rock shelters, temporary structures, windbreaks, and dwellings made from whatever the land provided. In some places, that meant mammoth bones. At first, a mammoth bone shelter sounds almost mythical, like something invented for a fantasy film. But in parts of Eastern Europe, archaeologists have found structures built with mammoth skulls, ribs, tusks, long bones, and probably covered with hides, wood, bark, or other materials. Imagine the scene: a ring of pale bones rising from frozen ground, tusks curved like white beams, hides pulled tight against the wind, smoke lifting through a gap, children asleep inside while outside the steppe is empty, dark, and alive with sound. Was every mammoth bone circle a house? Not necessarily. Some may have had mixed purposes, some may have been temporary, some may have been rebuilt or reused. But the lesson is clear. Ancient humans did not just hide from winter, they engineered against it. They turned animal bodies into architecture. And this leads to the next problem: food. Winter food is not just find something to eat. Winter food is timing. Many animals migrate. Plants disappear under snow. Rivers freeze. Small game becomes harder to catch. A failed hunt in summer is bad. A failed hunt in winter can echo for weeks. The key was knowing the calendar of the landscape. Not a calendar on a wall. A calendar in antlers, tracks, stars, winds, bird movements, frozen mud, and the behavior of herds. If reindeer passed through a valley in autumn, missing that movement could mean hunger in winter. If mammoths followed old routes, people had to know where the land narrowed, where animals slowed, where groups could cooperate. The hunt was not just a man throwing a spear at a giant animal. That image is too small. A successful winter hunt required scouts, toolmakers, butchers, firekeepers, hide workers, children staying safe, elders remembering past routes, and people who knew how to turn a carcass into weeks of survival. Because the most valuable part of an Ice Age animal was not always the meat, it was fat. Fat is dense energy, marrow inside bones, grease rendered from tissue, brain, organs, stored body fat. In a cold environment, lean meat alone is not enough. Your body needs energy it can burn. A mammoth was not just dinner, it was a warehouse. Meat, fat, hide, bones, ivory, tendons for cordage, hair for insulation, fuel when wood was scarce, material for tools and ornaments. The animal was not wasted because waste was expensive. And yet, humans were not simply meat machines. In some places, they also processed wild plants. Roots, seeds, starches, and plant foods could matter, especially when available seasonally. Grinding stones with ancient starch grains remind us that the Ice Age menu was more complex than the cartoon version. The caveman diet was not a brand. It was whatever kept children alive until spring. And children are where the story becomes most human. Because adults can look heroic in Ice Age paintings, children cannot be edited into symbols so easily. A child gets cold faster. A child needs food often. A child cannot always walk long distances. A child cries at the wrong time, sleeps at the wrong time, drops things, asks questions, and somehow survives because other people make survival possible. This is one of the deepest truths of human evolution. We are not born ready. A newborn horse can stand within hours. A human child needs years. In an Ice Age winter, that helplessness looks like a disadvantage. But it also forced cooperation. Someone carried the child. Someone shared food. Someone watched the fire. Someone repaired the boot. Someone taught the teenager how to read tracks, how to cut hide, how to hold a tool safely, how to listen when snow changes underfoot. Human childhood is long because human knowledge is large. Winter punished ignorance, so knowledge had to move from mind to mind. And that may be one reason elders mattered so much. A grandparent in winter is not just an old person. They are a memory storage system with opinions. They may remember the year the river froze early, the valley where reindeer came late, the plant that can be dug under snow, the cave that looks safe but fills with smoke, the place where wolves follow the ridge. Before writing, before maps, before weather forecasts, survival depended on memory carried in people. Today, if your phone battery dies, you may not know how to get across town. In the Ice Age, if the group's knowledge failed, nobody arrived with a charger. But even knowledge could not remove danger. There were predators, wolves, hyenas, cave lions, bears. Not movie monsters, but real animals with hunger of their own. Humans were hunters, but they were also meat in the landscape. Fire helped, groups helped, weapons helped, shelters helped. But the safest defense was probably not bravery. It was awareness. Do not camp where predators travel. Do not butcher large animals carelessly near sleeping places. Do not leave scraps where they invite trouble. Do not wander alone at dusk if you can avoid it. Predators shaped human behavior not because humans were helpless, but because winter made every creature desperate. Then there was sickness. This may be the quietest challenge. Cold does not create infection by itself, but winter crowds people closer to smoke, damp hides, limited food, and each other. Injuries heal poorly when nutrition is bad. A cut can become serious. A tooth infection can become deadly. A broken limb can turn a skilled hunter into someone who must be fed. And here again, survival becomes social. The archaeological record contains individuals who lived with injury, disability, or developmental stress long enough that someone must have helped them. We should be careful not to turn every healed bone into a sentimental story. But healed trauma does show a basic fact. People sometimes survived things they could not have survived alone. This is where the word caveman fails completely. These were not grunting background characters waiting for civilization to begin. They planned, they remembered, they made, they taught, they cared, they argued around fires, they repaired clothing, they buried their dead, they carried children through snow, and sometimes they created beauty where survival alone would have been enough. Think of beads sewn onto clothing, pigments, carvings, cave paintings, ornaments made from ivory, shell, bone, teeth. Why make art in a world that can kill you with one bad storm? Maybe because meaning is also survival. A group that shares stories shares identity. A child who learns the painted animal learns more than an image. They learn attention. They learn memory. They learn that the world has patterns. They learn that they belong to people who know those patterns. In winter, hope is not soft. Hope keeps people working when the sun disappears early. Hope keeps people repairing tools before they break. Hope keeps a group moving toward a valley they cannot yet see. So how did ancient humans survive winter? Not with one miracle, with a chain. Fire without fuel fails. Fuel without shelter fails. Shelter without food fails. Food without hunting knowledge fails. Hunting without clothing fails. Clothing without sewing fails. Sewing without teaching fails. Teaching without cooperation fails. And cooperation without trust breaks in the dark. Winter survival was not a single invention. It was a web. The strange thing is, we still live inside that web. Your coat is a descendant of scraped hides and stitched seams. Your home is a descendant of windbreaks, caves, huts, and bone structures. Your kitchen is a descendant of the hearth. Your family meal is a descendant of shared calories around fire. The modern world did not erase Ice Age survival. It insulated it, electrified it, and put it behind walls. The next time your room feels cold, remember this. Once, somewhere under a sky full of winter stars, a small group of humans kept a fire alive through the night. A child slept between warm bodies. Someone listened to the wind. Someone checked the embers. Someone knew that if they could make it until morning, they could begin again. And spring, though invisible, was already on its way.